everybody, welcome to the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Tilford, joined by Jules Gill.
Hello, everyone.
And Ash Millman.
Hello!
Now, we've already done our blind ranking of the actual, objective, clearly respected by the world games of the year. And you can go and find the video for that on the channel. But basically, the whole point of that was that everybody got to blind rank their favorites, which assigned different points to them. Number 1 was 20, etc., from the top 20 candidates of all the year. And then when we got to the top 10, we revealed all of that stuff, but I thought we could just do a host of different podcasts, cherry-picking the best things to talk about with some of the best people. So, this one is on Resident Evil 2. So, as an opening question, why did you guys have it as your game of the year? It ended up as game of the year overall, but it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, I think, simply put, it's probably one of the best remakes for a video game that exists in the current industry. I feel like, in terms of the amount of love that the dev team poured into it, the amount of respect that they paid to the original as well, but also advancing it enough so that it felt like a very fresh experience, even for veterans alike. I honestly cannot say... I can say a lot. I can say some bad stuff about it, but it is overwhelmingly positive.
Right. I think you got... Did you get the platinum on it? You did a lot on this thing.
I absolutely lived on this game for about a month and a half, and I was doing lots of speed runs. I was watching tips. I was trying to get through every single one of the extra DLC mode things they added out. Honestly... I haven't gone back to it since. That would be my one negative, but we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But in terms of just the experience from start to finish, I left it thinking to myself, oh, I've played through this campaign mode for 3 or 4 times back to back. I'm going to go and do another one tonight. Like it's because it was each campaign, once I whittled down the hours, it only came to about sort of like 2 hours, 1 hour 30.
Once you get used to it, you can absolutely like fire through it. Like it kind of does promote like replayability. How much did you get through that?
Oh, I finished it. I loved it. I really like it for just a short game that has everything that you want in it. Like, it's a good 12-hour campaign. Like, the first time you play it, maybe not 2 hours in one night, Julian Gill. But a good 12 hours from just the Leon campaign. You get the Claire one as well. So I just think it's a wonderful little tight narrative and has loads of fun like puzzles as well as combat. I think the way that it balances tone along with fun, innovative gameplay is really good. And coming at it as a new player to the Resident Evil franchise, which I feel like balances out your like old school knowledge of all the ones that came before.
Was this your first Resident Evil?
Yeah, this is my first one.
That is fascinating.
That's mad.
Because like, it's weird in the current climate, you never get games that do the like puzzle-based progression, or not that much anyway. Especially in something that's like being a horror or like a with shooting elements or whatever. Did that stuff stick out? Like, go find these 3 coins, then go find this weird bone key and whatever.
I always expected Resident Evil to be like Call of Duty with zombies, you know what I mean? Like, I had this really weird impression of it that I just hadn't
because you've seen the trailer for Resident Evil 6.
Yeah. Like, I just hadn't challenged it from all of the recent Resident Evils, and I knew the old ones were classics. Like, I played bits of them, but I'd never gone all the way through properly and seen like friends play them and stuff. But like, I'd obviously just warped it in my head to something that it wasn't. So actually getting into it and being like, okay, no, this is a really measured puzzle-based game with a bit of zombie avoiding, rather than, oh my god, okay, let me hack my way through these lickers.
Right.
Was really interesting. And like I say, I've said before, like it got me into the franchise of Resident Evil as a whole, because I was like, okay, here's my introduction point. Let me go and have a little dab with all these other things and see what I can get from it. So it's like it's just a fantastic game for introductions and for veterans. As you
so I was going to mention, like they obviously like overhauled the way that it controls, the way that it looks and everything. But like one of the things that used to be a staple of RE was always this like isometric camera, or like really specific camera placement that like kind of got like, it kind of clashed with some of the tank controls, and you're holding up as your character runs off one perspective, and then you run the wrong way when it comes to the next thing. But like it's more for Jules, I guess. But in the same time, it's like, what kind of made you check this one out? But like that difference between isometric horror versus like over the shoulder stuff, do you think that is just a way better way to do a Resident Evil game?
I mean, it's like comparing 2 different things. It's almost quite weird thinking of this as being the Resident Evil 2 remake, because it is so different to how it plays. Now, I will always have a soft spot for the early Resident Evils because that fixed camera perspective, not being able to see all of your location, not having control, is a perfect way to create a sense of fear and dread within the player, because you then put a noise that's outside. You can, what's it called when it's not part of the scenery, but it's...
the whole diegetic
That's
thing?
the one, So you've got some sound that you know is in the real world, but you can't see where it's coming from. You then round the corner and boom, there's a zombie. Boom, there's something horrible to look at. And you're like, oh, wow, that is shocking because it's like a movie. It's like, whoa.
Look at this square man.
And to be honest,
back in the day, that was terrifying.
I'm probably one of the few people that really loves those tank controls. Because
I'll stick up for them too.
I think that they're absolutely brilliant. In fact, it was one of the bugbears that I had when it came to the first Resident Evil remake that they did, in that they said you can either play it with the new controls, which were like run around and using the analog stick, or the tank controls. And I was like, why is it defaulted to these new controls?
It was
Put it back
weird...
to it's still a fixed perspective. Put it to the tank controls.
Yeah, the tank thing's strange because it did contribute to like the horror feeling, because it was like, I can't get away, oh my god,
Yes,
like I'm trying to shake this thing off me or whatever.
I mean, it makes you look like the worst trained special forces in the world if you're running on like, hold on,
it's gonna rotate.
Let me line up my shot, brother.
Also back then you had no idea if it was actually gonna like land on a shot. You had no aiming reticle, there was just nothing at all.
Right, okay, so we had a discussion about how much you loved the Resident Evil 2 shotgun. Once you got that and like fully upgrade it, and you just start like, running up stuff and like, bye head.
Yeah.
In the original one, when you're playing that, you have to wait until they are right in front of you and then aim up at the last second and just blast them apart. It was terrifying because you're like, oh god, this is...
Just holding onto your gun like, I'm going to shoot you at some point.
It's happened to me before. I was over at my cousin's house when he first got this game back in like 1996, I believe, for the first
6
Resident
or
Evil.
7, yeah.
When he got that, he was like, oh, come and have a look at this. And he missed the shot. And I remember him going, oh, like that. And I was still like, oh, I don't like this.
Because then you get locked into the whole, like the zombie gets a hold of you, and then it's like, oh my god, I can't get it off me. And it's like, I'm not fully like comfortable with the controls. All that stuff used to just work together. But like I said, they've done such a great job of like upgrading all that stuff, because they do make you way more capable as a player in this. Like, you know, you can turn on the spot and you can nail headshots and you're more comfortable. But for me, the horror comes more through some of the atmospheric stuff. Like the first time that you unlock, you like make one of the shutters go up to the right side of the building, and you go down one of the corridors, and all you see at the end of the corridor is like this moonlit window with a zombie at the window, and the shadow casts all the way down the corridor back towards you. It's so I can't think of the word cinematographic. I was going to say cinematic is the word that I want. But it's, you know, it invokes all those like old school like zombie horror films, and like it's almost like a jump scare, but like a dynamic jump scare, because whenever you turn to see that immediately hits you.
It's that,
I love all things like that.
It's like one of the very first scares you get in the original Resident Evil is when you encounter the licker in the liquor corridor. And
we should talk about the liquor.
And you hear the droplets of blood, and you go down, and then Leon looks up, and his little plasticine face that he had because of Resident Evil PS1 graphics. But in this version, in the remake, obviously you hear it, and you hear the clacking of the nails, and it just suddenly comes out of nowhere, and you're like, oh, bloomin' hell.
You get like a little cutscene with it, don't you? 'Cause it's one of the few points where it actually goes, okay, here's like a mini cutscene whilst you're in the middle of doing like actual walking down the corridor. Like it's the smallest one. And then I was like, what the hell is it? What's this whole thing? Like, it's another zombie, and then it drops down and does a big lick. And it's all
I can't think if it's universal that I think everybody encounters the first licker at the same point. It's the corridor on the top floor.
By the STARS office, I think.
Yeah. And it's like that bit when you open the door and you know it's in the corridor ahead of you somewhere, but it's all smoky and like the window's broken in, there's rain there and everything. Like that is like masterful horror, like for me. Like, because you really have to like super slowly walk, and you can't crawl, but you crawl your character, you move him, like feather it so slowly.
It was when you find out in the remake, especially, that the lickers can't see you if you walk, because they have no eyes, because their brain is like obviously blown out of their head. But there's that lovely bit where you go back down into the police station, and you go down to the right once you've opened that shutter you're talking about, and you have to go back through that area again, and you know that the zombies climbed through the window last time that you came down, so you're like, right, I'm ready for that. But as soon as you go there, you hear the little clack, 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 and you're like, wait, what? And you have to run and got them chasing you and the zombies, and it's utterly
honestly,
like...
it made me think of like, I mean, like when you like chase a spider in your room and you lose it for a bit, and you like turn around and it's right there, and it's like, oh god, it's like waiting. Like there was a bit in that part of the environment where you're walking through the corridor, and I could hear it breathing, but I couldn't see it, and I turned around and it was on the roof above me. I had that like full on like, oh, there's a spider in the house like style reaction to it, which is just awful. But did you guys do the thing where you expended like most of your inventory to kill one, or did you always try and get past it?
No, I was proper like, to begin with, I was like shoot, and then I realized oh my god, ammo is really limited. Like I don't know what I'm doing here. Like I kept trying to find gunpowder, just squish it together, be like, please get me through, because I kept trying to run past zombies and not do it properly. Really? So try and run past, get grappled, be like and then try and like stab them and everything. I was like, there was so many that just had bits of my equipment like in them, like that weren't dead. But like, I was like, I need my knife back, please, sir.
That's great.
But yeah, no, my whole experience of the Resident Evil narrative was panic, like blind panic all the time. And then once I went through it again, I was like, right, let me approach this in a measured way. Let me shoot a couple, or maybe fire something that like makes someone go over here, like have a look around. But yeah, initially it was blind panic, shoot everything, use as much ammo as I had. Like if I have it in my pocket, I'm gonna use it, like sort of thing. Then it got to the point with all the dogs in the bit where you're in the car park, and I was like, I've got no guns, got no weapons. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Like,
we kind of did that on the we did like a challenge DLC stream where we tried to get through, because they ended up releasing some of that stuff as DLC, like how far can you get on these certain areas, and that was all about like ammo conservation and making sure you're nailing headshots and stuff, which like you kind of stumble into over time. I think one of the best things is that you get comfortable as Leon and Claire. You get better at the headshots and shoot them in the knees to take them out and stuff. Well, it's just great.
There's an argument to be made that Resident Evil 2 as a gaming experience, the remake, is fantastic. But as a point of horror within the series, it's actually one of the lowest points because it's overexposure. People are saying that this is a much more action, adrenaline-fueled thing, where if you actually look back at the original game, that was at the point, the apex of its fear creation. Like, it was a genuinely scary game for the time. Yeah. Then Resident Evil 3 came out and started moving things towards the action spectacle. Now, it's kind of like, oh, you're walking through a courtyard with 3 lickers there, and you're just walking past them like nobody's business because you've done it so many times. It's kind of like the fear is dissipated because you're almost like overwhelmed with like, oh, it's run now, go this way, like it's explosion, bang. Like,
there's a ton of that at the beginning. I quite like that you do get comfortable with aspects of it over time, because initially you're freaking out at every little thing.
And then over time, the amount of time that I was like when the body falls down the stairs in the first corridor, I was still like,
my shotgun.
But I quite like that, like over time, like it is like a horror character in a certain scenario that you do get more comfortable. It's like, okay, like I'm okay with these things, I'm okay with the zombies and the lickers, and I think I can handle Mr. X, and we'll get onto him in a bit. But like I like that they always drip feed you something new. Like I was going to talk about like that difference between the slow burn stuff at the start and then the full on action fare towards the end, because I like the ramp up. I like a game to go somewhere over time. But at the end, like, you know, you do have a couple of big monster fights. It's always against Mr. X, but you have these big sort of like beastie monster fights a couple of times in the whole campaign, and at the end you're just fighting that giant eye thing that you can just shoot over and
William
over again.
Birkin's G.
Burke,
he is a Burke, isn't he?
Yeah, big Burke.
And it's like, what did you guys think of that stuff? Because like I guess like you, Ash, are like new to it, so it's like, did that stuff feel natural, or was it like, oh, what the hell? What are they doing?
No,
It's
I really enjoyed
different.
the growth because it starts off really small. I think you describing it as being a more action-based thing. I saw someone describe it as like the Terminator 2 to the Terminator, which I think is a really nice way of describing the game, because it feels like all the horror stuff's there, from like xenomorphy alien stuff to transpose that to zombies, but then they do it really tight and then grow and get bigger and more action-based. But you obviously have the beginning in the police station where it's tight, it's claustrophobic, you're learning who your enemies are, what's going on. Mr. X gets introduced, he's stomping around, you're like, whoa, what's going on over there? So you get all that stuff introduced, and then as you go on, because you've seen so much of it, you get more of them that you have to then fight and battle against, which makes it more action-based. And I think growing that and slowly developing on it was the best way to do it. And then once you get into the proper sewers with the mutants, and then the tree bit where...
I was see all the botanical or whatever.
Yeah, the botanical stuff, like all of that, like growing from that point and then turning into different horror that was then claustrophobic again and grew out again. I thought that was a really nice way of continually like cycling it, but like spiraling it over. So you get like, okay, I'm scared. Okay, now we're just going to kill everything. And then, okay, I'm scared again. Now I'm going to go and kill everything.
That those weird like tree, grass, botanical things. Like some of the ivies are some of the only enemies where you really have to like specifically shoot them. So I guess like at that point that it's like, okay, we're going to literally challenge to see how well you've taken to the shooting at that point.
And they will one hit kill you if you don't have a thing. They'll literally just bite your head off, won't they?
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, that's different.
They were great. I really like the design of those.
No, they're great. That leads me to my first negative point.
It's games of the year, Jules.
That's fine. I can still...
Okay.
Just because you don't have to be overtly positive about everything for it to be
Yes, you
good.
do.
Oh.
But you're allowed to be
That's
negative.
this was a pod run. Sorry.
I know.
You signed up for this.
Sorry.
I know.
The G spawn, the offshoot little baby ones that are in the sewer that come up and rise and try and grab you.
Oh, yeah.
They can get in the bin. like I like the design of them. I think they're great. But when you have to fight 3 of them and you're running through that little horrible swampy cesspit.
You mean those big mounds of essentially big poop?
Yeah, the big poop monsters.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, there's that to me reflects the worst part of the Resident Evil franchise, where it's just basically, hey, look, we've just chucked a load of mass together. It's just like, it's.
I like that guy.
I don't know. It's just one of those things where I feel like as the series went on, it decided that it didn't really understand let's put Silent Hill up against Resident Evil. Right, Resident Evil was great because it was cinematic horror. Silent Hill was amazing because it was psychological horror because of what they all represented and stuff like that. And it's fantastic to farm into that. But when it came moved apart further and further and further, we've now got sort of like Resident Evil 6 and 7, which was just like, it's a humanoid shape, but it's goo.
It's got eyes everywhere.
Yeah, it's got
Body
eyes.
horror,
But maybe it's because I don't.
I think it's because we've played a lot of them over time. Because I think if you're new to it, then that feels fresh and worthwhile.
I just think
I
when you're
couldn't
doing...
tell this monster apart from any of the other sort of like spawny style things.
I get that. But when you're dealing with mutations, when you're dealing with the sort of horror that Resident Evil like presents, it's body horror. It's all about the horror of a transformation and things happening to you that you don't control and that sort of thing, which is a scary aspect of itself, but something that we get exposed to loads in media
That's
as
what
it
it
is.
is.
So like we can get loads of horror films where it's about the horror of the abject and all that sort of thing. And having that in a game is still really interesting and really good. I can understand why you don't find it as scary, but I still think it's a really interesting point to have it from. As much as it doesn't need to represent anything, it represents the fear of transformation and the insides being out and things just feeling uncomfortable. For a game to thrive on atmosphere and environment, as Resident Evil does, it needs to focus on its weird, goopy enemies that are body horror.
They've like kind of gone. If they were Venn diagrams, they've always overlapped and they've always tried to do bits of each one. But they've done it to like a detriment over time. Sometimes it's just like, hey, this person transforms into a giant mold, like the end of Akira, and there's an eye on their shoulder. There's always an eye on their shoulder. But in RE2, they I think it's only really those big mound poop things that are like sort of that exemplify like you said, a giant massive stuff. They don't go too far with it, thankfully, whereas they have done in some of the older ones.
But then if you ask me what my favourite sort of encounters are, it's the Birkin encounters when he is mutating into something else. But I think it's because we can see it. We can see the direct sort of like chain of command. With these like poopy monsters, they're just kind of like, they were new enemies designed for the game that replaced the giant spiders and the alligators and stuff like that.
Oh god, if it was a giant spider in the sewer.
And that's the thing. Maybe that's why I was a little bit disappointed with it, because the fact that I wanted those giant spiders. Because imagine that with those graphics, how disgusting they would look.
Because they do, they changed the giant alligator fight, and I'm
really glad they did.
They kind of make it a bit too easy, where it's just like stick to one side of the screen and you'll auto win, whereas it was an actual fight in the old ones. But I still, in terms of taking something that was, like you said, was assumed like a boss battle or whatever. I guess you quite like that.
That actually leads me on to a good point, which is like the boss battles in this game. Like Resident Evil isn't really known for its boss battles. I know that there are some amazing boss encounters.
It's more known for its boss characters, but then the actual fights are just sort of like shoot it until it dies.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, if you go back and play the first 3 games, like all you do is you go, okay, cool, I'm going to stand here with the best gun I've got, shoot, 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 shoot. Oh, you've hit me. Heal, heal, shoot, 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 shoot. Because there's no point in moving. You almost can't dodge half of the attacks that are on.
Plus your rotating move, rotate back to shoot again. But
in this game, I can only pick out maybe like 1 or 2 examples of like an okay boss battle. For the most part, they were really good. Like,
oh, I thought you were going to say they were bad.
Oh
then.
no! The 2 boss battles that I don't really like are the fight with G at the end when you're on the tram with the minigun as Claire.
Right.
And I wasn't a huge fan of the
crane.
The crane.
That was pain in the ass.
That on the hardest difficulty when you're trying to do it with like minimum ammo and like 2 saves in the game. I'm just going, just fall off.
That's one of the downsides. Because like I said, when we talked about like, the tank controls and you're sort of fighting it, and it kind of contributes to the horror, but something that is a downside of having the over-shoulder stuff is that it is bolted to your back. So when you're trying to like evade and you kind of like rotate the whole viewpoint, run away from the thing, turn around and hope that there's some distance between the two. And that boss fight hinges on trying to lure it into a specific spot, which is very hard to do when you haven't got a zoomed out enough perspective
and
to know
it's
exactly
as big
where
as
it is.
Yeah,
and you're forever like rotating and moving and rotating and
you're
stuff.
going to get battered by it as soon as you're near the point.
And everything just restarts again. But like that, there's a lot of different sort of movement stuff and ways that they've gone back to obviously what they try to do in RE4 and then applying that to RE2 that I think overall works, even though like there are some like clumsy bits, I guess, with things like that. What did you guys think of the Mr. X stuff? Because it immediately made me think of Nemesis, which is what they're going to now do.
I didn't actually like him.
Are you not fan?
No.
Why'd you
He's
like
got a little
him?
fedora on.
I think he's a great character. I think he's a great concept, and I think he's good for the game. And he improved my gameplay, but I didn't like him just because it was continuously the same thing, like getting hunted down. Like I was more frustrated by the time that he would find me rather than scared. Like initially, I was like, "Wow, this is really cool, getting hunted whilst I'm doing all this stuff. That's a really great concept." But as it went on, I was like, "Ooh, lay off a little bit," because it was just constant like do. I was like, "Okay, cool, I've got to run through all the zombies again and go
I did
around
have
again."
one bit like that. I think loads of people had this where you eventually get get the lever or the crank to move up one of the platforms
Yeah.
inside the library.
Yeah.
And it means that you need to go to the middle of the library and then like use this thing and then crank it and
And
move
there's
it.
like 3 or 4 zombies.
Bunch
that
of
are already
zombies
there.
and at that point, obviously, Mr. X is always following you. So at that point, he's probably in the room with you, and you're just trying to. You just need to do this one thing, and you can't because he's always right there.
Yeah.
That was the only time in the whole thing where I was like, "Oh, please leave me alone."
He's the only one that I had a gripe with. He was the only
Right.
one I was like, okay, this game is great, but Mr. X, please, sir.
There's
please.
a bit later on when you go into the clock tower or something, and you have
Yeah.
to do something else inside there, and he does chase you, but then he like they coded him so he doesn't come into that room. And
There's a few rooms
yeah.
that he's not allowed into, like
Yeah.
the safe rooms and stuff like that, which makes sense because obviously you shouldn't have him just popping in.
I love that he like leans in and then can't get in.
But I think that's the one problem is that there should have been a mode which allows him to come in there. Like I said,
There's
like,
probably a mod or
like no
something.
safety or something like that, so you can just like come into any room that you're in. And I feel like that would be like the true.
I bet they probably had a whole bunch of like boardroom conversations where they were just like initially you probably did start out going everywhere, and then it was like, well, we can't have him literally in front because you could just save lock
yeah,
yourself.
well, you'd
Yeah.
save and then you'd start the game and
He's
you'd go,
always
he's
there.
right high sort
Yeah.
of thing.
Because I don't know, like I'm assuming you guys did this as well, where you're in a save room and you go to leave and he's right there, but he's on the
Yeah.
stairs.
Yeah.
And so like you kind of feather it where you like
Turns
step.
and looks.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
like-
turns and looks and you sort of like you step back and then he goes, he's like, oh, well, I guess you're not there then. And he goes to walk away and then you put 1 foot forward and he's like, oh no, you are there. And he like comes back down again.
My favorite thing is that there's online forums that are described. They've come up with theories as to why he can't go in those rooms because obviously he's a bioengineered weapon. He's
Right.
got some form of programming that from Umbrella,
Good.
and he's therefore not allowed into rooms that would have high frequency of agents that either work for Umbrella or are working on their payroll. So, for example, the development room where the first save room is, that's where Wesker would be a lot because, as we know, he has
Yeah.
that secret dodgy film canister in his thing. But and then another one is the police chief Irons' thing, who's on their payroll. So it would make sense that he wouldn't go into
That
those
totally
areas.
works.
So,
Like,
so
yeah.
I mean, if you want to play it in that lore, then there you
Yeah,
go.
they could have done with having because they flesh out that he's this like weird like super undercover agent that goes in with his little fedora. and his trench
Undercover
coat.
my
I know, and
balls.
it's like he's like 8 foot tall and he's grey, he's bright grey. But that's apparently why he looks like a 1950s detective because
Yeah.
he's forever undercover getting like secret
good.
documents and everything.
To be fair, he's not finished yet. He was like
No,
he wasn't
true.
totally finished, which is why he's got
Gets
the
his,
paper
like,
mache
pigments
face.
back in or whatever, yeah, and takes his fedora off. What do you guys think of the? I said it might not apply to you, Ash, as much, but like, have you seen the old designs for Claire and Leon? In terms
Oh,
of
I've
they
seen
changed
the
them?
blockiness
Yeah.
and like the it's just the hair that I think is fantastic when I see the hair now. Because I've played it since. Like I've played a look and had a look at the old game since I've started the remake. But looking at their hair is the most fun thing. Like Leon's little like fluffy, like
Yeah.
beautiful swishy hair. Then watching the back one where it's literally just like his blockhead. Like it's so good.
Because eventually they patched in that you can unlock those skins. You can unlock the original like
Yeah.
polygonal models
Which
or
is
whatever.
which is just a great shout.
Yeah.
Another thing that they just showed that the devs who made this love the
Mm.
franchise because they could have easily have just gone like, oh yeah, we'll put some sort of paid for customization stuff in,
Yeah.
but like they did really well with the
Yeah,
costume
yeah.
they chose. They even put Ezra Miller in.
I know there's a lot of
Ezra
like
Miller.
little-
Ezra Miller's not that. It's Ezra Walker.
I was thinking Ezra Miller's an actor.
yeah,
I believe.
exactly.
He's not in it.
No, I wish he
Sadly.
was. I wish he
know.
wasn't that. It'd be amazing.
Sneaking around.
But Ezra Walker was the original planned protagonist for Resident Evil 2, but she was scrapped, and so there was like a demo that's still floating around today where you can still play as her. So
Right.
they put her costume in as a nice little
That's
reference.
nice.
Because I was going to say, what did you think of the? Because in the old Resident Evil games, because they did such a big job of being like, okay, these are the heroes, these are the stars, like these are like literally they're called like stars in the
Yeah,
game,
yeah.
whatever, as well as being stars. But and it was like you're playing as these like not superheroes, but these iconic action characters. For me, in the new one, I quite liked that they sort of reduced them down and said, well, they're still like capable officers and they're still like law enforcement or they're still stars members. But they didn't feel not necessarily overpowered, but like they kind of designed them down a little bit. Everyone looks a bit more everyday,
Well,
like it could happen to you kind of thing.
You look at Resident Evil 4. Resident Evil 4 is like over the top action, and
High-kicking
in
zombies.
5 it goes even further than that with the punching the boulder scene that everyone's now familiar with. Here, we have to remember it was Leon's first day on the job.
Yep.
It's just a regular grunt for the raccoon police
PD, yeah.
RPD, and then you've got Claire, who is literally just searching for her brother, who obviously does have some experience from the previous game, but isn't like fully involved, as it were.
Yeah.
So I did feel like they felt like much more relatable characters. They did make a lot of stupid decisions. Like, I mean, that chain link fence when they meet up outside with the helicopter crash, it's like, do you want to just scale that? Like, literally.
It's not even any barbed wire on it.
Like, nearby, like,
don't worry about it.
Just not
We could have solved all of it.
Yeah.
That brings me on to like the multiple playthroughs, because the original RE2 had it where it was way more of a mechanic where like one character could leave stuff in a safe for another character in a locker, so that when you played as someone else, you can go and pick it up, and you were sharing items. And it kind of got in the way. Like, it was some of the puzzles were really hard because you might not have something from an entirely different save, whatever. But like, what did you guys think of the idea of that stuff? Because like a lot of the multiple playthroughs kind of break the timeline. Like they retcon it for whoever you're playing as at the time. Their viewpoint is what matters, and everything just kind of molds around that. But what did you think of the multiple stuff?
I think having like the A and B and the New Game Plus stuff, that was kind of the first time I remember it working so well for me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't do that many New Game Pluses, but I was like desperate to try it on this sort of thing, and see from different perspectives and play as different characters and see how they react to stuff. Like, it was just interesting. I thought it was a really nice way of doing it and having two campaigns in one, so you can play through one bit and be like, whoa, I've completed Resident Evil 2, and then be like, oh my god, flip the page, there's more. No, I really liked it, and that they kind of meet in and out and come together and go away again. I thought it was a nice interweaving story.
I definitely love the idea of it. I still enjoyed it in the moment. It was just, I remember like people comparing. It's like, well, if this scene happens from this guy's perspective and he sees this happen, then this can't happen from this person's perspective, and then it doesn't like line up or whatever.
I think it's too nice an idea to scrap on like minor discrepancies. As much as it would be nice to have everything flow perfectly and have plots exactly line up, we are in video game logic. Like,
oh yeah, totally.
I would still have preferred if they would have put. I felt like there was effort put into the A and B scenarios, but I would have loved it if just the B scenario was playing through the other person's A scenario with new cutscenes that were rendered to make sense for that. Like I know, like think of it as the kind of what if scenario, because that way it would have been quite interesting to see Leon interact with like Sherry. So like that would have been interesting because that's never happened before. Like,
because that's the thing. Sometimes they should like that chain link fence bit. You know, you do see like, oh yeah, this is if you're playing as Claire, it's like, well, you get to see what like from her point of view, and then Leon's. But then they also have like some sequences that are like you're going down the exact same corridor fighting the same enemy as both, and it's like, well, both these people weren't in this same position at the same time, so it doesn't really work.
I mean, but, I'm fine with it for video game logic's sake. I mean, like it's.
I just thought if you're going to do an A and a B campaign, especially when RE2, I'm pretty sure in the original RE2 they were more designated separate things.
Yes,
and like I said, they were sharing items only through a locker or whatever. That was something that like didn't stick out, but I was aware of. I was just like, oh, okay, well, I've already been here, so why am I here as this other character or whatever?
It's going to be interesting seeing if they are going to do the Resident Evil 3 remake, because obviously we've gone.
Have you not seen the news, Jules Gill?
That it is happening.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that's fine, but it's just a case of like they've gone from 2 characters, then now they're going to be going back down to 1 again.
Well, on the new box art, it's Jill Valentine and Carlos Oliveira.
They did have him, didn't they?
I don't know if they're going to do the same like multiple playthrough story type stuff.
Oh, there's a lot of like space for them to fill with that then, because obviously he is not in it for like
for ages.
Yeah, for a fair amount. Fair play.
But still, I mean, in terms of the game engine, another point that I had down is like the general like Gore tech. Because I mean, one of the GIFs that did the rounds, or a little clip that did the rounds before launch, was someone unloading a shotgun into a zombie's chest. They fell over, and then their top half crawled away from their legs and came after you anyway. Did you have any moments like that where you're like, holy words I can't see on YouTube? This is very messy and gory, but done very well.
No, exactly. I think this is where my love for the mutant stuff comes in, because I think it was so gory and so proper, like icky. Like everything was so visceral, and the blood felt real. The zombies like tearing themselves apart and having faces and jaws come up. Yeah, like it just felt so like, ooh, that's disgusting. That's a proper zombie. And like when you get bitten, that sort of thing. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I just thought it was the best that they could have done, especially when you watch the comparisons. I think there was one jaw one, which I remember someone's jaw coming off. I can't remember if it was from the first remake or from 2, but just the comparison was enough to be like, holy smoke.
Because I love, I love the physics that they gave them, because it's like, for me, like obviously zombies are so easy to just be horde enemies. Like there's loads of them, you're going to mow through them, like Dead Rising style or whatever. But in this, like, every single independent part of them has physics. And I remember even in the demo when they sort of like lumber towards you, and you can tell that only their chest is being willed towards you, everything else is being dragged along, and it's just like a whole new way to even do zombies.
I'd like to see the sort of how they developed it all, like whether they did actually put like a weight point on it, and then that was the thing that like
so.
Like it's very clever. I enjoyed immensely like capping them in the knees and then watching like a leg come off and just being like, ouch.
Yeah, did you
Sucks to be you, brother.
Did you spend time just seeing what the Gore-Tex did? Like, because I've seen those people just empty a shotgun until something's a torso.
You can just turn somebody into mulch. Like it's quite disgusting to be fair. But at the same time, the freedom to do it, it's just like I think the worst bit is when you think you've taken out a zombie. You've like unloaded a few clips into its like body and like whatever in its face, and it's all like mangled. But then it grabs you and it does a close up, and you're like, oh god, I don't want to see my handiwork. Like, come on.
Because I guess that's like a wider thing as well about like the idea of zombies as enemies. Because obviously in RE3, like Nemesis is a big deal, and you're like, and they had Mr. X in here, which I wonder if they like put him in as like a bigger deal because then it varies things up. It doesn't mean that it's just a zombie game. I think that they do the zombies exemplarily well. That's a word. Exemplarily.
It's not a word, but we'll say
they do them really well, Jules.
Yeah, they do them really well.
But I was gonna say, what do you guys think of zombies being enemies in general? Because for so many games, they are just fodder enemies. Like whether it's Left 4 Dead or Dead Rising or whatever, the way that they do them is way more considered, and I really appreciated the amount of effort that was put into this.
It's definitely empowered the zombies, as it were, because like it's very easy to describe zombies as being pathetic, but it's because they represent a pathetic human. It's kind of like the quality of everything that makes a person human in the absence of.
Yes.
So therefore, the term pathetic isn't meant like as in like a putting down thing. It's just literally like there's a shell.
Yeah, they're soulless.
And you don't have sympathy for these zombies. Which I guess is probably the next thing to try and address in horror, is making you feel sorry for the things that you're killing.
Some of them, because they are so well detailed and designed, and they have like everyday clothes on and stuff, and they are just sort of like just clawing towards you. That's all they're quote unquote living for. It does kind of come through as like sad.
There was actually one reference that made me not like emotional, but it was like a memory of when I was younger playing this second one for the first time. And it's when you go down to this one alleyway, you see a woman wearing a red crop top and like blue like hot shorts. I don't even know what you call
hot
them.
Pants.
Hot pants. That's it.
Exemplary hot pants.
And she was the cover. Like of the Resident Evil 2, like when it was doing a load of its campaign material back in like 1998 or whenever it was. So it's kind of like looking at that one zombie design and being like, oh wow, they've updated it for this one. Was actually like
that's like where she ended up the whole time.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, fair play.
That's what you think of zombie enemies.
I think the zombies are great. I feel like they all feel individual and they all feel like they have weight. I feel like coming up against them, there's not one that you're going to face and be like, oh, easy pickings. Like all of them feel like they've got the potential to absolutely ravage you, which is really good. I think the one bit that got me, we're talking about sympathy for them. There's a moment where you're in the jail cells, like deep down, when like, and you see them locked in their cells. That was a bit where I was like, oh, these guys
they're just
are nasty.
forever stuck.
And then they unlock and you're like, oh wait, no, get back inside.
And when the first one went through, I wasted all my ammo going through them all through the grates. So it's like, oh, it's really sad. But no, I think they all feel individual as well, because sometimes you can face so many of the same copy over and over again. Like obviously they're similar, but like I don't know. I just feel like it's not a wave or a horde. It's like one single one at a time. Or if you're fighting three or a couple in a corridor, it feels like, oh my god.
Yeah, man. Well, it's kind of is the opposite of like a World War Z. It's not a wave of them. I don't think I ever had a single duplicate. There probably are in there, but I don't feel like I shot the same one twice.
But I love the fact that there's like, if you go into a room and there's more than two of them, your heart is literally like, okay, well, I've got to really like plan this out, because like I'm going to waste like potentially 10 bullets if I shit this like guy in the chest a few times.
Yeah.
So it's like they make them feel empowered in that sense, which is lovely.
And for me, that's one of the biggest like positives, is that they made what is a 20-year-old game like just feel fresh, and like a zombie experience feel fresh again.
It's the sound design as well.
Yes.
Like hearing the like, especially the female zombies. I don't know who were the voice actresses for them, but doing those screams and wails, it's like guttural. Like somebody was playing me the audio clips and was like,
it's death metal.
It was like wet, and that's I know it's weird. That's the way to describe it. It was a wet scream because it was coming from a throat that was like gargling blood.
I liked Birkin like just sort of yelling and screaming, because he doesn't want to. At that point, you fight him the first time, he doesn't want to do any of it, and like I mean, they mostly carry that through. But like the sound design on him as well is like he's retching and he's struggling and everything else. But yeah, I mean, in general, like we all thought that it was one of the best games of 2019. Everybody had it on their list to varying different degrees, and obviously it got to the top in the end. So yeah, closing comments, we're big fans of Resident Evil.
Definitely.
But yeah, let us know what you think down in the comments below of Resident Evil 2, or come find us on social media if you're listening along on the audio platforms. For now, though, this has been the WhatCulture Gaming Podcast, and I've been your host, Scott Tilford, joined by Jules Gill.
Thank you very much for having me.
And Ash Millman.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.